I thought my life was perfect. From the moment I woke up in my sunlit penthouse overlooking the city to the evenings spent driving my vintage Aston through quiet coastal roads. Everything seemed like a dream I had worked endlessly to build. I had a career that I loved, a home that felt like a sanctuary, and a closet full of pieces I had bought with my own hard-earned money. And then there was him, my fiancé, the man I had fallen for in a way that made every previous heartbreak feel meaningless. Our love had started in a whirlwind of late-night dinners, spontaneous trips to Europe, and laughter that made the world feel small. I trusted him with everything. We shared secrets, whispered hopes, and made plans that included everything I had fought to achieve. But sometimes, when he smiled a certain way or lingered just a little too long on my possessions, a flicker of unease stirred in me. I brushed it off, convincing myself love couldn't coexist with suspicion. But deep down, a quiet voice whispered that something wasn't right. It started small, almost imperceptible at first. A casual comment about the car I had spent months choosing. You know, this one's nice, but wouldn't it be better if we upgraded to something bigger? I've always liked the black SUV. I laughed it off, thinking he was joking. But the remark lingered. Then there were the little boundary pushes, opening drawers without asking, casually asking about my bank accounts, or teasing, "You must have so much money saved. I hope you'll share some with me when we're married." Each time, a knot of unease tightened in my stomach. I tried to tell myself I was being paranoid, that love required trust, not suspicion. But late at night, lying beside him, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was calculating, silently measuring what he could gain. The charm, the smiles, the sweetness, they were still there. But beneath them, I began to see a subtle, insistent hunger. Something about the way he looked at my possessions made me feel exposed. Like I wasn't just loved, I was being assessed. The day he proposed felt like a scene straight out of a movie. We were on a secluded terrace overlooking the city skyline, the sun melting into gold over the buildings, and he knelt, ring in hand, eyes full of what I wanted to believe was love. "I want to spend the rest of my life with you," he said. And for a moment, the world shrank to just us. I said yes, my heart racing, imagining a future built on laughter, adventure, and shared dreams. When I told my family, the reactions were a patchwork of excitement and unease. My mother hugged me tightly, whispering, "I'm so happy for you, darling," while my father clapped me on the back with a broad grin. But I noticed my older cousin leaning slightly away, eyebrows whereupon, muttering something about timing and whether anyone had looked too closely at our finances. During the celebratory dinner that evening, toasts were made, champagne flowed, and my closest friends cheered. Yet in the background, there were hushed conversations I couldn't fully hear. Whispers about inheritances, the house, and the security of my assets echoed faintly in my mind, unsettling me in ways I couldn't name. I tried to brush it off, telling myself that love and family support were enough. But even as I smiled for the photos, a small voice inside warned me that this perfect moment might be hiding cracks. Cracks that could one day split everything I had worked so hard to build. It started innocently enough. Or at least that's what I told myself. We were lounging in the living room, sunlight spilling over the polished floors, when he leaned back on the couch and said, "You know, your car is nice. But wouldn't it be amazing if we got a second one? Something a little flashier, maybe a sports model." I laughed nervously, waving my hand. "We don't need another car. This one works perfectly." But the way he smiled, a half smile that didn't reach his eyes, made a small chill run down my spine. Later that evening, as I poured a glass of wine in the kitchen, I caught myself replaying his words. Was it really just a joke? Or was it the first test, a subtle probe to see what I might give without question? The following week, he casually mentioned, "If we ever move, I'd love a place with more space, maybe with my office set up on the top floor." I forced a smile, hiding the tightening in my chest. In the privacy of my thoughts, I wondered if I was imagining things, if my own insecurities were exaggerating his casual suggestions. But every time he mentioned anything material, it carried a weight, a quiet expectation that one day he might actually try to claim it. And in the back of my mind, the fear gnawed at me. What if I ignored these small signs and they became something I couldn't stop? That tiny spark of doubt grew, almost imperceptibly, into a knot of anxiety. By the time I went to bed that night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, questioning whether the man I loved so deeply was truly in love with me, or just with everything I had worked so hard to achieve. Asterisk, by the time the weekend arrived, I couldn't stop thinking about his words, the way they lingered like a shadow over everything I loved. I found myself calling my closest friend, voice tight and hesitant. Do you ever feel like someone you love is looking at you as if you're just a paycheck? I asked, barely able to meet her gaze over the phone. She was silent for a moment, then said, I think I know exactly what you mean. That's not love if it comes with strings. Her words hit me harder than I expected. I remembered the early days of our relationship, long walks in the park, laughing until our stomachs ached, staying up all night talking about dreams, not dollars. Back then, it had felt effortless, tender, and safe. Now, even his smiles carried a weight I couldn't ignore, a subtle calculation beneath the charm. I tried confiding in my brother, hoping for some perspective, but he brushed it off with a laugh. You're imagining it, he said, but his half-hearted tone gave me no comfort. Alone, I went back through memories, comparing the warm, trusting man I had fallen in love with to the one who now seemed to measure every glance, every word, against my possessions. The betrayal settled over me like a heavy fog, intimate and suffocating. I loved him, yes, but I couldn't deny the creeping realization that something vital had shifted and that my heart might be walking straight into danger without me even noticing. Asterisk, it happened one evening over dinner, the kind of quiet night that should have been ordinary, comfortable. But he didn't start with jokes or subtle hints. This time he laid it all out, sharp and unapologetic. You know, he said, swilling his wine glass, I think it's only fair that once we're married, I have a say in the house, the car, and even some of your earnings. I work hard too, and I deserve a piece of what you've built. The words hit me like ice water, freezing my thoughts midstream. I stared at him, searching for a smile, a wink, anything that suggested he was joking, but there was none, just a cold certainty that made my chest tighten. What do you mean, exactly? I asked, voice trembling. I mean, he continued, leaning back with that smug satisfaction, that everything you've acquired could be ours together. You've worked hard, yes, but I've earned a place at your side, and I think it's only right that I benefit from it. I felt a surge of disbelief, anger, and heartbreak collide in my chest. This wasn't love, it was calculation. I could see the triumph in his eyes, the quiet assumption that he had won before any words were even spoken. For the first time, I realized the depth of his entitlement, and the betrayal cut deeper than anything I had imagined. I was reeling, not just from what he had asked, but from the realization that I had loved someone who saw me as a means to an end, and that my life, my achievements, were suddenly up for negotiation. Asterisk, that night, I couldn't sleep. Every corner of our home felt different, tainted by the revelation of his greed. I found myself sitting at my desk, laptop open, papers spread out, staring at the prenuptial agreement I had signed months ago, assuming love and trust would protect me. Now, the words on the page felt like armor I hadn't yet learned to wield. I pulled up bank statements, titles, property deeds, every document that proved what I had built on my own, every record that could stop him from thinking he could simply claim it all. My mind raced as I plotted quietly, thinking through every scenario. If he tried to push, I would be ready. I could feel the tiniest flicker of power stir within me, growing with each careful note I made, each legal clause I highlighted. Consulting my lawyer over encrypted emails and late-night calls, I began to see a way to reclaim control, to shift the balance back in my favor. He thinks he can steamroll me, I whispered to myself, staring at the city lights outside my window. But he doesn't know who he's dealing with. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt the surge of agency that comes from preparation, from knowing that the next move would be mine, deliberate and unassailable. The fear was still there, but it had been tempered by a new clarity. I wasn't just a victim, I was a strategist, and soon, he would realize that the game had changed entirely. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. The days leading up to the wedding were a blur of silk, flowers, and endless checklists, each detail more extravagant than the last. Invitations were sent, tables set, and every corner of the venue gleamed with perfection. On the surface, it looked like a dream, friends and family buzzing with excitement, champagne flutes clinking, laughter filling the air. But underneath its sparkling veneer, I felt a tightening knot of dread. He moved through the crowd with a practiced charm, shaking hands and smiling, yet I caught the small, cutting remarks aimed at my family, a half laugh about my mother's choice of jewelry, a sideways comment on my father's investment advice. Even among my friends, he dropped hints that subtly undermined my accomplishments, casting shadows over my hard-earned success. The contrast was stark. Outside, an immaculate celebration of love. Inside, a simmering tension I couldn't ignore. I watched him in quiet disbelief, wondering if anyone else could see the undercurrent, or if it was just me, trapped in a mix of love, fear, and growing anger. Each moment at the rehearsal, each toast and cheerful smile, felt like a performance masking the reality that my fiancé's greed was bubbling closer to the surface, ready to erupt at any moment. I tried to focus on the beauty around me, but the whispers in my mind kept returning to the same thought. This perfect wedding could turn into a perfect disaster if I didn't act. I never expected to find it. Yet there it was, emails and lawyer drafts, all meticulously detailing his plan to claim my house, my cars, and even portions of my earnings once we were married. My hands shook as I scrolled through each message, each one confirming every fear I had tried to dismiss. The man I had loved, trusted, and planned a future with wasn't the partner I thought he was. He was a schemer, calculating every step to take what wasn't his. A wave of disbelief hit me first, followed by anger so sharp it left me breathless. And then, a strange sense of calm began to settle over me. For the first time, I held the power. I knew his intentions, his timeline, and his expectations, and now I could act strategically and deliberately. The betrayal was real, undeniable, and yet it had shifted the balance. Where he had believed he was in control, I now held the cards, and I was ready to use them. The room was buzzing with excitement, glasses clinking, laughter echoing off the marble walls. When I stood in front of everyone, my heart pounding like a drum. "I have something to say," I began, my voice steady despite the tremor beneath it. All eyes turned to me, friends, family, and, of course, him. He smiled, that arrogant half-smile, clearly expecting praise or a playful interruption. "I can't do this," I continued, letting the words hang in the air like a storm. "I can't marry someone who thinks my life, my home, and my hard-earned wealth are theirs to claim." The room went silent. I revealed the emails, the drafts, the meticulous plan he had laid out to take everything once we were married. Guests filled the space, whispers rippling through the crowd. "I thought I loved you," I said, locking eyes with him. "But love doesn't come with threats or greed. You wanted a partner or maybe just my assets, but you will get neither." His face went pale as murmurs of outrage spread. Family members shook their heads, friends looked shocked, and I felt a surge of vindication wash over me. The power had shifted completely. I was in control, exposing the truth in front of everyone who mattered. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt the exhilarating rush of justice, public, undeniable, and entirely mine. The days after the canceled wedding were surreal. Everywhere I went, the ripples of what had happened followed him like a shadow. Family members who had been quietly skeptical before now looked at him with thinly veiled disapproval, their whispered conversations no longer hidden. Friends I had confided in spread subtle hints, careful not to overstep, but enough that the gossip reached every corner of our social circle. I even shared small, pointed posts on social media, photos of me enjoying life, captions about self-respect and boundaries. Hints that the truth of the engagement was far from the romantic story people assumed. Every comment, every message, confirmed that the narrative had shifted. He, who had once carried himself with effortless charm and assumed entitlement, now felt the weight of judgment pressing down on him. Invitations he had taken for granted no longer arrived. People avoided eye contact, and his arrogance faltered under the social scrutiny he had never anticipated. I watched quietly, savoring the satisfaction that came from karma finally aligning. The tables had turned, and the very circles he had sought to impress now reflected his greed and manipulation back at him, sharp and unflinching. It was not cruelness on my part, it was the natural consequence of his own choices, finally catching up to him. And for me, each whispered conversation, each awkward glance he received, reaffirmed that justice, however delayed, had arrived exactly as it should. Sitting alone in the quiet of my apartment that evening, I let the emotions settle over me like a wave. Relief came first, heavy and undeniable, a weight lifting from my chest that I hadn't realized had been there for months. Empowerment followed, the knowledge that I had taken control of my life, defended everything I had built, and refused to let greed and manipulation define my future. But beneath it all was a soft, lingering sadness or mourning for the love I had thought was real, the future I had imagined, and the trust I had given so freely. I reflected on the contrast between then and now, the naive vulnerability of a heart willing to believe the best versus the strength of someone who had survived betrayal and emerged wiser, sharper, and fiercely independent. I replayed memories of laughter and shared dreams, acknowledging their beauty even as I recognized the lessons they carried. The pain wasn't gone, but it had transformed into clarity. I could see myself as the architect of my own life, no longer defined by the expectations or manipulations of another. And in that stillness, I felt a quiet pride in my resilience, in my ability to rise, and in the knowledge that, while love could hurt, integrity and self-respect were mine to hold forever. After the dust settled, I turned my focus to rebuilding and fortifying every part of my life. I finalized the legal protections around my assets, ensuring that nothing and no one could threaten what I had earned. I invested in new properties, a sleek new car, and even a small vacation home, each purchase a quiet statement of independence and triumph. Friends who had watched the drama unfold now looked at me with admiration, and I sensed a touch of envy. They didn't just see the material gains. They saw the intelligence, strategy, and resilience it took to navigate betrayal and emerge unscathed. I threw myself into work and passions I had neglected, traveling, meeting new people, and savoring the freedom of decisions made solely by me. Each toast with friends, a smile from a stranger impressed by my poise, reinforced the sense that I had reclaimed not only my life, but my narrative. I was no longer the person waiting for love or validation from someone else. I was my own architect, my own protector, and my own success story. And in that autonomy, I discovered a thrill and satisfaction far deeper than any luxury or material gain could offer. Knowing that anyone who had doubted me now had to witness my triumph firsthand. As the months passed, I found myself reflecting on everything that had happened, on the whirlwind of love, betrayal, and eventual triumph. I thought about the man I had once believed would be my partner in life, the one who had tried to claim my home, my car, and my hard-earned wealth, and I felt a strange mixture of sadness and clarity. Love, I realized, is not just about passion or shared dreams. It is trust, respect, and integrity. I had given him all of that, and he had failed to honor it. Yet in losing him, I gained a deeper understanding of myself and what I deserved. My wounds were still healing, but the scars were reminders of resilience, not failure. Revenge had been served in full measure, empowering me beyond what I thought possible, and the world seemed kinder when I no longer carried the weight of deceit. I had learned that vigilance, self-respect, and courage were the ultimate assets, more valuable than any luxury car or sprawling estate. Looking back, I could almost smile at how close I had come to giving it all away, but now, knowing I had protected myself and risen stronger, I felt a profound sense of peace. I hadn't just canceled a wedding, I had reclaimed my life, my dignity, and my heart. And for the first time, I felt truly free.